What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. We're talking recruiting. We have Brian Smith on the show, his thoughts on OSU, some big-time 25 targets, all that and more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Really do appreciate it. We got Brian Smith on the show. We're just going to jump into recruiting, into Ohio State. Lots to get to. But first, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Big game this weekend, Brian. One of the reasons I like having you on the show is because all fan bases can get a little, an echo chamber, right? We just kind of talk about ourselves. You watch a ton of college football from the national perspective. You've been in recruiting for a long time, so you know a lot of these players. What are your thoughts on the big game this weekend? Buckeyes, Badgers, Madison, night game.
Well, I mean, I got some numbers here because besides being a recruiting guy, I'm a stat guy. And I have some interesting thoughts that I'd like to bounce off of you, including a question. So first off, just open-endedly, and I know you're beyond biased as a Wisconsin fan, what do you think the quarterback situation is? That's the first question you got to ask. Like, is it plausible? I mean, Ohio State's defense is legit. And they even had guys out last week. But Penn State looked like a junior high football team when they were on offense. They were 1 of 16 on third downs, and the one was at the end of the game when Ohio State was basically just giving up yardage to eat clock. Can Wisconsin throw the football? Yes or no?
Not consistently. Not against Ohio State.
Then this is going to be ugly because you're not going to run the ball on them all day. The other thing is Marvin Harrison. I don't know if Egbuka is going to play or how much.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Because when you have them both out there, that's a problem. Like Wisconsin's pass defense right now is 29th in the nation. It's pretty decent. But there's no way to prepare for Marvin. There's not. Egbuka gives them something, and then they got the Stover kid who's going to get paid to play, and he's a tight end. Like, I had no idea. That game against Notre Dame, he ate Notre Dame alive.
Yeah.
And they got to, like Ohio State, their defenses are comparable. That's an issue. So does Wisconsin have at least one kid that you would feel comfortable in, could even be the nickel, in a man coverage situation?
So yes, and Stover ate us up last year. Like, Stover's a problem.
He's a good player, man.
Wisconsin, there's a really good free safety. We have Hunter Wohler, one of the best tacklers in the country, big physical guy. You could put him on Stover, but the problem is then you lose Hunter Wohler everywhere else. Like,
yeah, you need him to clean up problems.
Yeah, that he leads the team in tackles because he's been the eraser when the linebackers and the defensive line doesn't make a play. Hunter Wohler comes up and wraps up. So if you say go cover Cade Stover, sure, you're moving your chess piece somewhere else, and then you're leaving. So yes, they have a guy I would feel relatively comfortable. Like, Stover's still going to get his, but again, it just opens up problems somewhere else if you start moving that guy around.
Okay, well, that brings up the next question then. Wisconsin running back. Obviously, one guy gets banged up. You always like to rotate guys. Has anybody else stepped up? Because you're not going to this isn't the days of 38 carries at tailback you. Any other playmakers, running back, or et cetera, they can help? I mean, they're not going to offset Marvin. Let's be realistic. But is there anything like that you can think of? And then I have a key point I want to bring up statistically.
No, unfortunately, the guy would have been Chez Mellusi, who we lost for the year. Jackson Akers, a good fit for this offense too. Jackson Akers been the number 2 running back. He's good. He's solid. He hasn't taken a lot of reps yet. He's not going to replace Chez Mellusi, right? So no, that's a problem too. Now Braylon Allen is coming off one of his best games of the year. Played really well. It's going to be a lot tougher sledding against Ohio State. And the other thing I would point out too, and I'm not trying to detract from Wisconsin's ability to make this a game, but you mentioned Wisconsin 29th in pass defense. Consider they played Iowa, right? The worst.
Where is that really at? Yeah, Iowa's just like.
They played Rutgers with Gavin Wimsatt, who's maybe outside of Deacon Hill, the worst quarterback in the Big Ten. Now, they also played Purdue, who can throw the ball. They played Buffalo and Georgia Southern, who are spread teams. They played Cam Ward at Washington State. So they have played some dudes, but there's been, especially lately, the quarterback play that they have played has not been very good.
Okay. Well, that leads me into this. The overbearing stat in the history of football that determines wins and losses is what? Turnovers. This is the number. If they are not this number in the positive against Ohio State, this is a double-digit game. It's just the way it is. You have to be able to score big plays against them or take the ball away. You're telling me they don't have big play guys, so that narrows it down. And preferably you want both. And that doesn't mean you can't hit a backside screen, catching them in a blitz or something. They're going to have to scheme something up realistically, or they're going to get beat by double digits. And I know people are saying, their offense isn't great, blah, blah. It's not. But they can bludgeon people up front because their linebackers don't miss a lot of fits. You can run on them some. Notre Dame ran on them some. Penn State had a few moments, but like Penn State's running backs are dudes, and they got killed.
Yeah.
So I don't think Penn State's O-line's as good as Notre Dame's. Those are the only two games they played comparable competition, but they still did pretty well. So I'm thinking that it's going to be hard sledding. They need +2. The other thing is, if you're going to beat them, if there was ever a day for the Wisconsin punter to be named the player of the game, this is it. You're not going to beat them with 80-yard touchdown passes. Okay. You at least need to make Ohio State go 75+ yards every freaking single time. I know it's boring as all get out, but either you got playmakers or you don't at red wide receiver. Wisconsin, not so much. The other thing is, if you can just kind of do better than the disappointing stat for me, I was shocked by this. They're 64th in the nation in rush defense. That's not what I expected out of Wisconsin. That's disappointing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an injury thing. You'd have to speak to that, but the number says 64. No bueno.
Yeah.
What's going on?
That number matches up with the eye test. They've been gashed a couple times. Now, I would say some of the gashing has been from mobile quarterbacks, right? Luke Altmaier just ran for 100 on them. Hudson Guard had success. Cam Ward had some success on the ground. So that's been Gavin Wimsatt, the Rutgers quarterback, had some success running here and there. That's been some of it. I mean, Iowa can't pass, so they literally ran the entire game, and Wisconsin got gashed on one big play. It still drives me freaking nuts. But it hasn't been a great rushing defense at all. They've missed tackles. The linebackers haven't been sound. Some of it's probably new scheme. Players recruited to an older scheme, trying to find their run fits. Some of it is just there's a lack of playmakers defensively outside of a Hunter Wohler, that safety. So it hasn't been great. I think not playing a mobile court, like Kyle McCord's not going to run for 100 yards against you. So that aspect of a rushing attack that's hurt Wisconsin is kind of out of the way. But Kyle McCord can also sit back there and throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. Why would he run? Right? Like it makes a lot more sense to throw to your number one receiver in college football. So yeah, it hasn't been a great rush defense this year. Some of that's definitely talent too. They lost 2 big time dudes in the front 7 last year. Nick Herbig, Pittsburgh, Keanu Benton, Pittsburgh. So there's a talent thing, a scheme thing. I think it's a combination of those two.
Well, then they need to figure something out this week. They may have to go with a stack look or something. Mccord has only thrown like 1 pick. He's not the most accurate guy, and he's had a couple of guys or times that he should have been picked. It could be 3 or 4. But overall, they're like, look, the other team ain't got as much talent as us. Don't throw it in harm's way. We're going to walk out of here with a W.
Doesn't this feel like kind of an old school Ohio State team? Defense first. We're not.
Oh, this is 1991.
Right? Like silver bullets. We're going to beat the crap out of you. Our quarterback's going to be he has 12 touchdowns and 1 pick, but you wouldn't call him CJ Stroud or even anywhere in that atmosphere. But they just defensively, you can't score on them. And then they have a couple big playmakers on offense. And that's it. That's enough, though.
They don't make any big mental errors on special teams, et cetera, to give you short fields, and their defense is going to make you go 50+ yards over and over. Unless you have NFL talent, it's pretty hard. So, yeah, I don't see this going well again. Right here, brother. They got to be at least +2 in turnovers to have a shot in this game, barring like if you get a punt return or a punt block. Okay, then we're talking. Then you can reduce. That's the same thing, but they got to have special plays because they're not grinding out 17-play, 83-yard drives against Ohio State. It's not happening.
Agreed. I will say the last win against Ohio State for Wisconsin, it was Ohio State come to Madison. Ohio State was number 1 in the country. They start off that game with a 97-yard kick return for a touchdown. Wisconsin does. Never look back. You need something
That's
like
what you got to have. Yeah. That especially early in the first 5 to 7 minutes of regulation. Look, you need something for that crowd to be basically in jump around mode all game long, because if Ohio State comes out and punches it the first drive, that place is going to be as quiet as an empty church.
Yep.
Because they've seen this show before. First quarter's big.
I've said that same. I agree with that point so much. You cannot let Ohio State come into your home, get up 14-0, 17.
Oh, yeah.
Like anything like that. You have to have a great first quarter. Like, you have to hit them in the mouth. You have to have a good drive. You have to have a couple good plays. I think it's the key to the game, how it starts. I think because then the crowd builds up, and then anything's possible when that pressure starts to ratchet up. I think that's the biggest key to the game. All right, we're going to take a quick break, talk about our friends of the show. Come back. We're talking about a couple big-time 25 targets that are coming to Madison. What does Brian think about their games? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy platform in North America. Easy, exciting way to play DFS. And I love it because I don't need to compete with a bunch of other people and all their numbers and their stats and their time. I don't have time for that. I can't compete against the sharks and the pros in daily fantasy. It's just, I have a life to live outside of this. Prize Picks lets me pick 2 to 6 players. I'm done in under 60 seconds. I clickety-clack on my mouse. I'm in, I'm out. 2 players or 6 players. Over, under on stats. That's it. Does, Brock Purdy have more passing yards than this? Does Deebo Samuel have more rushing yards than that? That's it. Let them run. I'll let the winnings roll in. Apple Pay makes it quick and easy to get deposits into your account. Go to prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege. Use code lockdowncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege. Use code lockdowncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager. We talked about this. Brian knows this because he's into recruiting, into college teams. You need the right pieces on your team to make it a championship contender. That's what LinkedIn Jobs is here to do on the corporate side. Screening tools. They don't let anybody in your interview door that has no business being there. It saves them time, saves you time. Saving time is saving money. LinkedIn Jobs is the best place to do that. The #1 professional networking platform in America. And again, it's why small businesses continue to rank them #1 compared to leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's get Brian back on. Let's talk some big targets here, Brian. Rowan, let's start with Rowan Byrne. 6'6", 290, offensive tackle out of New Rochelle. That's kind of up in my neck of the woods. We call that place New Rock, actually. Great offer list. What are your thoughts on Rowan Byrne?
Big time athlete for his size, can get off the blocks or get off the line of scrimmage quickly, hit his block, go to the second level to make another block. He's a little more advanced than a lot of high school kids at his age. He's only a junior, just to be clear. And it's funny because you see a kid sophomore film that's a lineman, then you move. I watched this film again before we came on the show today. He's changed his body a little bit. Mm-hmm. And part of that's just, evolution. And part of it is, hey, I'm pretty good. If I train hard, this could work out well for me. And he's the kind of frame that Wisconsin fans expect. You look at him, you go, oh, that looks like Bo Schembechler 1986 at Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin 1998. Rose Bowl kind of teams have this guy at right tackle. Mm-hmm. And that's who he is. National recruit, big time player. Wisconsin's looking at. I think he could play as a redshirt freshman at a school like Wisconsin. He's advanced enough. He's still learning. O-line takes forever. But the foot-to-foot movement, just it's not clunky. Guys that are 300 plus pounds as junior in high school, there's some projection with it. You're like, we're not sure. He's not that way at all. One step here, one step there. Everything's fluid. Everything moves naturally together. He's a good athlete for his size. He's a big-time player.
Yeah, that's the thing that stood out to me when I was watching the film is when you're watching a lot of tackles that move well, a lot of times in the high school level, they're like 260, 270, and you have to say,
they need to add weight
with 30, 40 pounds. It's really nice to see a kid who he's 290, 300. But it doesn't look, like you said, it doesn't look like he's processing how he's going to move. A lot of the big guys are like, all right, foot here, arm here. He looks
It looks like, you ever see something when you go into a gym and somebody just started their membership and they're just completely out of shape.
Yo.
And the trainer says, hey, go warm up on this machine over here. And you're like, I need to be rolling video because this is hilarious.
Yeah.
That's what an offensive lineman on a screen for the first time, or block their guy and moving up to the second level against the linebacker, herky jerky. Like they're all over. That's what some of them could look like. He's been on the treadmill for months. He's already figured it out. He's been on the elliptical. That's unique, especially for an underclassman at the high school level, talent or not. He's fundamentally sound for his age at a higher level than most kids are. I have a chance to play pretty early. I never like to say freshmen are going to start at O-line, but this is a kid that can be one of those guys. It's good to see because, again, this was a bad year in 24 overall nationally for offensive tackle recruiting. This kid would have been one of the better ones, and he's got a chance to be one of the top tackles in the class of 25.
Well, and everything kind of backs that up, right? The film looks good. He's a composite 4-star per 247. The offer list checks that box. Offers from SEC schools, Big Ten schools, kind of all across the board. So let's move on to Tariq Agholor, another composite 4-star, 25 kid, cornerback coming out of the D.C. area, 6 foot, 6'1", somewhere in that range, 180 pounds. Film, he definitely looks the part. I know we kind of talked about it beforehand. What did you get out of Tariq Agholor watching that film?
Arguably the biggest compliment that I will give a kid, and forget like how big they are or where they play or whatever. When I sit there and I look at the end and I project to the next level, I always ask myself, okay, ideally, if they were at a school that didn't have just like a huge hole at spot X, where would you play him to maximize his skill? And in this kid's case, the answer is threefold. It's slot corner, or nickel corner, however you want to define it, that star position that Saban likes to call it, outside corner, or safety. He's a football player. That's the biggest compliment that I could give Agholor. And it's in a situation where he's playing in Maryland against some pretty good competition. He's physical. He's downhill. I'd kind of lean towards safety, at least for now, just because he's one of the rare guys at DB that doesn't mind tackling. That's a pet peeve of mine. Corners in particular are not friends of the tackling fraternity, but this kid would be one if he plays it old school, like we were talking about Wisconsin-Ohio State matchup. It's going to be 1991. This kid fits that. And he can still cover. He's got good hips and can change direction, but I like the tackling, man. College football is atrocious right now, and part of it's they just don't tackle as much in practice. I get it, but this kid's learned how to do it. You can play him in free safety, corner, or whatever, and he's going to make an impact. Definitely a very, very good prospect.
Well, that's the type of guy, too. We've talked about this before. I think we talked about this in regards to Xavier Lucas or Jay Harper. I'm forgetting which one, but both those dudes can tackle, too. They're bigger cornerbacks.
Sure.
The way teams spread you out now, you unless you have a Deion Sanders where it doesn't matter because he's so friggin' good, your cornerbacks have to tackle. Like it's not optional anymore.
Here's the difference, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of the school, but there are a couple of DB coaches and people I know have talked to other coaches that have brought this up to me in the last year and a half. Everybody runs the same freaking screen game. Everybody. Even like Wisconsin's offense has been archaic forever, but they still ran look screens, tunnel screens, etc. It's not hard. Why is it that everybody runs the same ones? Well, it's simple. If one guy is out of a fit or does a really poor job of tackling, it's a touchdown. Mm-hmm. We want a freebie. That's it. There's no rocket science to this. Well, on the other side of that, you don't want to give up the freebie. There's a guy that I was talking to that covers a team, and he didn't like a kid that his team was taking, but he goes, the one thing this kid does well is he's very physical and he tackles well near the line of scrimmage. I said, well, you've already answered what they're doing. I watched the kid. I'm like, yeah, he's not playing man coverage. He's going to have to play star and situational and all that. But in situations where you're playing a team that screens constantly and uses tight ends out on the perimeter, he can fight through the trash and make some tackles. Okay. And he'll be a good special teams player. Well, this kid, talking about Agholor, he can play corner and he can do that. If you have those guys, then you can dictate to the offense. You're not going to nickel and dime us for 5 yards. And then, you see the old school Florida State in the 90s, they used to kill people with wide receiver screens. This is before everybody started changing their defenses. Well, now everybody running that. Everybody runs nickel. But how many teams have a takeaway corner, like you said? Deion's obviously an easy way to describe it. Wisconsin's okay at corner. If they take that next step and just have a guy that's like second team all Big Ten, then you can blitz more. then you can do different things up front and dictate. Like you can just show before the quarterback even walks up, you can just bring everybody up and say, just the point, we're coming.
Mhm.
This dude over here is going to cover your number one. Until you get to that point, you don't have a real defensive playbook because you can't make all the play calls up at the booth that you want. Can you take away the other team's number one? Screen game, deep game, and all that. There's only a few of them, man. But the teams that have it, it matters. It really changes the game.
Well, you and I have talked about cornerback, defensive line, basically probably more than any other spot, right? And I feel like defensive line, we still got to get better there, but
way better.
But I like you and I think you and I are in agreement here. The cornerbacks that they targeted in the 24 class, Harper, Xavier Lucas, Agholor, and looking at guys like Tariq Agholor, Trey Poteet in the 25 class, like they made strides in that area. So I'm excited.
Humongous.
Mm-hmm.
Like super tip of the cap to Wisconsin. They gotta. I'm not saying that this is an easy concept, but they just got to head that way at D-line now. And their biggest acquisition isn't in recruiting. It's in the defensive line transfer portal next year. Good luck with that because every team's looking for the exact same thing. But they need conservatively 2 really good transfer portal D linemen. That's rough. So getting 1 is hard. They need at least 2. But that if they got that next year, they could be one of the top 3 defenses in the conference. And the Big Ten right now on defense is nasty. Talking Iowa, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, all those schools are national top 10 defense. Wisconsin could jump in that mix if they got a D lineman that's a pure pass rusher and maybe just got a little bit better. And it's going to be year 2 of the system. Huge. They'll be even better on defense, but it's still about talent, man. And freshmen are not the answer there.
Yeah.
Transfer.
We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk to Brian about Mabrey Mettauer's new film that he's seen. Has Mettauer got better this year? We're going to chop that up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. There is no easier way to get started. Player props. I'm on Wisconsin minus our plus 14.5 because that's you guys know how I roll. If I'm going to be at the game, I am absolutely going to have money on that Wisconsin spread. Maybe not the money line, but the spread, yes. I'm going to do that. Plus futures, prop bets, it's all there on FanDuel. The easiest, simplest, quickest way for all your sportsbook action. Plus, if you sign up now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. So $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed on FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, let's get back to our conversation with Brian. Mabrey Mettauer, I sent you some new updated film. Just curious if you've seen a jump from junior to senior film on Mettauer.
A couple of things. Number one, he is definitely better. The thing that I've mentioned with him and a few other kids that I know, there's Cedric Bailey is a player here in Florida. He's committed to NC State. From the time he was like a sophomore in high school, it looked like he was a 5th-year NFL player with his arm strength. He's a twig. He's 180 pounds, soaking wet at 6'6", but he looks like a relief pitcher that comes into the MLB's final inning and throwing 98. Mm-hmm. He's that guy. And he would just throw, I'm like, holy moly. But he about killed people. Like, dude, it's a shallow cross. Take something off of it. Mabrey's the same deal. Which one has the stronger arm would be a great thing to watch. But that's not how you win football games. And I said to you on this show, hey, he's got to hit the younger or the under stuff a little easier trajectory. There's a level 1 ball that's okay. The bullet. We're good there. Level 2 is the hardest. It's in between the linebacker and the safety. And then level 3, it's the deep shot. You're just your guy's ahead. Just let him run under it. The level 2 is a work in progress your whole life. Mm-hmm. That is just ultimate NFL precision. But the level 1 ball is the one that matters the most because if you can change your speed and still be accurate, which means you got to angle, all kinds of things, you're going to be in a lot of 2nd and 4s. You got to hit your check downs. You got to hit your quick slants, all those things with the right speed, with every single guy you have being different. Like there's going to be a tight end at Wisconsin that's a condor, but the same route from a slot receiver that's got short arms like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, you got to put it on him. Mm-hmm. And you got to change that. I've seen a difference with him. He plays at the Woodlands just outside of Houston. It's a famous program down there. He's getting coached, which certainly helps. And he's changed his trajectories. His volume is still the same. Like they throw it all over the lot, and he'll run a little bit. So he's doing similar things to what Wisconsin's doing. But the speed of the football, how he gets it there, arming, all the things have completely changed. He's just a much better football player. And the arm strength, if he ever needs to throw a dart, and there were a couple on his video, you're like, holy crap. You know, those are, he's got an NFL arm. It's not even remotely debatable. NFL arm. Now he's starting to show he's a quarterback, though. There's a lot of kids that I see have NFL arms that suck. This is a kid that's figured it out. I went from thinking he's a low floor, high ceiling kid to he's at least a moderate. He'll start at Wisconsin. Now it's just about the stuff that I can't grade. When he gets to Wisconsin, does he pick up the playbook? How the heck am I going to know that? All the physical tools, all the things that I need to see to say he's a Power 5 quarterback, check mark. He's there.
I'm curious. You mentioned you kind of went from the low floor, high ceiling to the moderate floor, high ceiling. Let's because we're fans and because we like the process, we like thinking best possible outcome with his physical size, his ability to run, his arm strength. If it clicks for him, are we talking like franchise type level quarterback? I'm saying like realistic ceiling. What are we talking about here for him?
There's a two-part to that. Number one, physically, sure, because he's a willing runner. This is the side note, and I didn't know this because I've seen him play 7-on-7, and quarterbacks don't run. He's a pretty good runner. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you're a linebacker or safety, or especially if you're a corner, that is a business decision to get in front of Mabrey. He's a big man.
Yes.
Like he's straight up Troy Aikman kind of size. He's big. But at the same time, it's still about the arm. And he makes the throws that he has to in different levels. So, yeah, I think he could be that. But for him to – he projects better at the NFL right now because who is he going to be throwing to at Wisconsin that I feel comfortable with? And, yes, I'm a very arrogant guy with you got to get 4- and 5-star guys. Prove me wrong, but the metrics for who goes to playoffs show it. They still got to get him somebody for him to materialize at the college level more than the pro level. They're going to get him receivers up there.
That's a great point.
It's just, they've got to get somebody that the other team has to scheme against. When was the last time Wisconsin had that guy? A couple of years ago, they had the kid that Cephas, one of the kids that
went to Cephas. You know, you could argue Cephas was that guy, but even Cephas isn't really that guy in the scale of a first or second round pick guy, right? You have to go back to
Altoon is the greatest receiver in Wisconsin history, I'm guessing.
Or
talent wise,
Lee Evans, who was a first round pick,
sure,
Chambers. Sure. But yeah, like the point is, we're going back 20 years now. I mean,
yeah, they got it. That's got to change. This offense will get a few kids, but again, portal. It's great to bring in high school kids, but even most of the Ohio State kids don't do a lot as a freshman. They just play them in spots. Then as a second-year guy, they take the leap. Wisconsin needs portal to help them, and they need it every year. How many 4- and 5-star receivers are walking out of the Badger State?
Never. I mean, there's not to say never, but it is very rare. So
exactly.
It's funny you mentioned Toon. Altoon's kid, Nick Toon, was a 4-star receiver out of Wisconsin that they got. Ended up playing for the Saints for a few years. But it's rare. Like there are not many 4-star receivers coming out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's the whole point. If you don't have somebody for him to take the top of the defense out of the equation, you got to be able to force him into some cover 2, cover 3. If you don't have that, then the other traditional, I'm a college player kind of guy, he's got some, like, and you're playing Ohio State or Michigan, again, like I said in the last segment, before the guy even's behind center, they're up at the line. They're showing blitz. They're in man. We do not care. You can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And they're right. You have to have a dude at receiver.
That's a great point.
It's just, there's 4 positions now in college football that are just way above everything else. Quarterback's obvious. D-end and corner, which I talk about a lot. And the other thing is it's not receiver. It's dude at receiver. Who's Johnny? Where's Johnny at before every play?
You put
left tackle. If you don't have him, left tackle would be that's the bonus. If you've got an NFL left tackle, the world is your oyster.
Right. You're sitting
you know what I mean? Like there's only 2 or 3 of those guys in college football a year because it takes forever to get guys into the normal situation. Like Wisconsin red shirts, and they've done a great job of it. It's still hard. So that's the albatross. Everybody wants one, but how many are there? Not very many. So there are more receivers than there are.
Yeah, and even the traditional O-line factories. Wisconsin struggled the last couple of years to find that tackle, right? That first or second round tackle. Iowa has the last couple of years. Their offensive line has been great. These are traditional offensive line factories. So, no, it's a good point. Brian, this was an awesome conversation as always, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Brian Smith is Locked On's recruiting insider as always. I'm sure he's going to be cheering along with us for the Badgers in Madison because you like an underdog, right? You got no skin in the game.
Well, I know people at Ohio State and some of the things. It's just I'm tired of them. It's nothing personal. If I picked one team or the other to win, I'd rather see Wisconsin. It's just something different.
Let's go.
That's it. I mean, nothing personal against Ohio State. It's just like, for the love of God, just lose.
I'll be at the game, Brian. I'll be cheering along. So,
all right, buddy.
On Wisconsin. We'll talk to everybody later. Thank you so much to Brian.